Any other? The Honourable Member for Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On committee, Bill 17, the Appropriation Act. Like many who have spoken today, there's no question in my mind that Alberta is at a crossroads. It's at a crisis point. Economics and crises that are going on in our far north raise some serious questions about how we're going to maintain a stable, dependable set of government services, the supports that people need for both expanding or maintaining the infrastructure that they live and work in. How are we going to maintain the services that Albertans have come to expect, and in many cases have lowered their expectations around, and I'm thinking more particularly about the health system today. This budget attempts to maintain stability, maintain support for the foundations of a healthy society, and I respect that. I guess like some others who have raised questions about the current debt load that we're taking on and the clear indication that we're not planning to live within any constraints around taking on debt. I have real concerns about that. And indeed, it builds on, I would say, 20 years of living beyond our means, of passing on to future generations financial liabilities and other liabilities that have not been in the best interests of our children and our grandchildren. We need to be paying more of what we're wanting to live, the standard on which we're wanting to live. So I'm not as concerned about the level of the debt we're taking on. I am concerned about the lack of planning around reducing expenses where we can in the public sector. I'm pleased that we're at least freezing salaries, that we're not looking at, or we are looking at Alberta agencies, boards and commissions and reviewing very critically the amount that we're spending there. Looking at efficiencies has to be number one. We need infrastructure. We need this time of investment and maintaining jobs and growth in maintenance of our capital infrastructure. But I guess I'm one who needs to see more indication that we have a vision. We know where we're going in terms of savings, of new sources of energy, new sources of economy, finances, and that we have a sense that we are, as a society, going to pay more of our share as opposed to passing it down the line to future generations. And that is a trend that was, of course, started by the PC government in the last 20 to 25 years and has left us in a tremendous vulnerability at this stage. But I don't see the solution in the current budget. I don't see a recognition that salaries have to be reviewed, public services have to be reviewed, user fees have to be looked at, new forms of revenue generation, quite apart from hoping and praying that the oil prices and gas prices will improve. We have to look at some new sources of revenue that current generations, and especially my generation, have to start paying more. We've talked about, I guess, royalties. No shift there. And it's hard to talk about those things at a time when the oil industry is on its knees, but we have not been getting our fair share for the last 30 years. And it means that now we're laden with massive debts to continue the services that most other Canadians expect, and Albertans certainly expect. So the dreaded provincial sales tax that we don't seem to be willing to talk about, and that would actually generate, even with 2%, would generate the same taxes we've been paying for many years before the Harper Tories cut it back to 5%. 2% in Alberta, 5% federally would bring us back up to what we were paying before, would bring in an extra perhaps $2 billion a year, and start to get a handle on the tremendous and growing debt that we're going to be, again, passing on. I have no problem with capital borrowing. This is an investment in our future. It's an investment in more stable infrastructure. But we do need to start paying our way, and we do need to have a more clear plan to pull down that debt before we leave office. And I don't see that here. So it makes me nervous in terms of what we're leaving to future generations. I know there are tremendous savings to be found in health. which is about 42% of our budget. Much frustration at the front lines of health that we're not using common sense in terms of purchasing, in terms of efficient use of resources, in terms of streamlining patient flow, and getting at some of the earlier stages in the community where we could be dealing with problems in family doctors' offices, using fully the skills of nurses and nurse practitioners, expanding the scope of some of our primary care networks where they could be doing so much more in terms of mental health and addictions issues, which are now ending up in emergencies and beds inappropriately being used. Long-term care, we calculated something like $50 million spent last year just keeping people in hospitals that really were not in hospital, were not healthy being in hospitals, needed to be out there where there was more connection with the community and more opportunity for the kind of quality of life activities that actually bring back health. So we know in healthcare, for example, that there are tremendous opportunities for savings. I talked yesterday, of course, about the importance of research in diversifying the economy and getting clear about the fact that medical research in this province has been nothing short of stunning globally. We are a world leader in research, have been up until the last 10 years when we've seen that funding eroded and the confidence and the loss of over 100 top researchers in the last year because of a lack of clarity about our commitment to health and medical research. And the win-win there, both for our drawing other resources into this province from across the country, across the world, and also the opportunity for innovation and new technologies and some real business opportunities, which is so much what we need to get off this single industry roller coaster that we've been on. Also, the concern about the removing of the debt cap. I call it a death cap, but it's a debt cap. Many concerns about why we wouldn't want to constrain ourselves within some kind of limit, and have changed so dramatically since the last commitment by the government to limit it to 15% of GDP. Without a debt cap, how can we have any confidence that we know where we're going and how we're going to manage our financial future? And what if low oil prices are the new norm? There's a huge gap then in funding that we can be expected to receive over the next few years. Not only does the bill contain nothing in the way of a debt cap, it offers nothing in terms of a debt repayment program. And I think all of us need to be more forthright, I guess, especially the government of the day, with how we intend to bring that down to a manageable level. Also concerned about the proposed amendments to the Financial Administration Act that aims to exempt the government from having to table before the House any loan agreement which involves a loan to an individual of less than $500,000. It's not clear to me what the rationale would be there, although the government has talked a lot about increasing openness and transparency, particularly since the former PC administrations were so challenged in that respect. I'd be curious to know what is the government thinking about not making public loans up to $500,000. That's inordinate as far as most of us are concerned. So, Madam Chair, I can't support the overall budget without a stronger indication that these folks know where they're going, how they're going to get there, and how we're going to leave our future in better financial shape, how we're going to pay more of our share in these years currently, and how we're going to manage, I guess, what's become a much more affluent culture and the high expectations that have come out of that, and the need to start reining in some of the expectations across the board in our public sector. And that includes physicians, but it doesn't preclude all the other high earners in our society that should be reviewed as well. I think in some ways the medical profession is being held up as a scapegoat in some of the spending. I think we need to look at all aspects of our public spending and recognize that all of it needs to be reviewed, and we need to get more real about paying our way whether it's in the public sector or the private sector and in government services generally. Thank you, Madam Chair.